The cheers inside the Zaltor Grand Arena were deafening, shaking the very structure of the colossal dome. Thousands of alien spectators, scaled, furred, and armored, chanted the name of their undefeated champion. Korvax, Korvax, Korvax. On the blood-stained sands of the combat ring stood Korvax the Butcher, a four-armed Jorvian gladiator who had never lost in 237 battles. His latest victim, a 7-foot Athari warlord, lay in pieces at his feet. The audience roared, demanding another match, another spectacle of violence. That was when the arena master made an announcement that stopped the entire Colosseum cold. For the first time in galactic history, an unranked species enters the arena. A species so primitive, it has no official combat record. Witness the madness as a single, unaugmented human dares to challenge the Butcher of Zaltor. Silence. Then confusion. A human? A three-eyed Velrothi noble whispered to his companion. What is that? Even the warriors in the combatants' pit glanced at each other. A species without claws, without exoskeletal armor, without natural weapons? Surely it was a joke. But then the human stepped into the ring. The challenger appears. At first glance the human looked small. No claws. No venom sacs. No visible natural defenses. Only 2 arms. He was clad in a simple black combat suit, tight-fitting, showing defined muscle but nothing compared to the towering monstrosities that usually filled the arena. His hands were wrapped in what looked like thin, padded gloves, and his stance, feet planted, hands raised, shifting his weight ever so slightly, was unfamiliar to every alien watching. Korvax laughed. It was not the amused chuckle of a warrior seeing an unexpected opponent. It was mockery pure and unfiltered. This is the joke you bring me? A soft-skinned, 2-armed creature? He raised one of his massive, curved cleavers. You insult me, arena master. This is not a warrior. This is meat. The crowd burst into laughter. But then, the human spoke. The first sign of trouble. You talk too much. A simple sentence delivered in a calm, almost lazy tone. The arena fell silent again. Korvax's eyes narrowed. What did you say, ape? The human didn't answer. Instead he rolled his shoulders, adjusted his gloves and smirked. The smirk that would haunt Korvax for the rest of his life. The fight begins. Ding. The match bell rang and Korvax, all 8 feet and 600 pounds of him, charged with the full force of a war machine. His cleavers, each capable of cutting through reinforced steel, blurred through the air as he swung all 4 in a cross pattern meant to cleave through bone and armor alike. The human stepped forward and vanished. 1 second he was there. The next he was under Korvax's guard, inside his strike radius, where no opponent had ever dared to go. Then came the first strike. Korvax barely processed it. A blurred movement, then a snap as something hit his left knee. A second later another snap, this time on his right. The great warrior stumbled. The crowd grows uneasy. The audience, trained to expect instantaneous slaughter, now watched in confusion. Korvax was off balance and the human, still untouched, was circling him like a predator. The laughter stopped. The human struck again. Not with a blade. Not with a weapon, with his hands. A sharp, clean impact to the ribs, faster than anyone could track, followed by another to Korvax's side. The sound of cracking bone echoed across the arena. The butcher roared in pain. And the audience gasped. The impossible happens. Korvax tried to reset, swinging 2 of his cleavers in a horizontal arc, but the human ducked, rolling under them effortlessly. Then in the same motion he drove his fist directly into the Jorvian's throat. Korvax staggered back, coughing violently. The mighty Butcher of Zaltor was struggling to breathe. Silence. Pure, deafening silence. The impossible had happened. The unbreakable champion had been hurt. Final blow, and a twist. Korvax, desperate now, lunged one last time. He swung with all 4 arms, abandoning form, abandoning tactics. Just pure brute force. The human didn't move. Not until the very last second. A blur, a sidestep so fast the camera struggled to capture it, and then, a single punch. Directly to Korvax's jaw. A sickening crack filled the air. The Butcher of Zaltor's massive frame collapsed, unconscious before he hit the ground. Boom. Dust settled. And then, the arena erupted. But it was not the usual victorious cheer. It was shock. It was panic. It was fear. The butcher hadn't just lost. He had never landed a single hit. Cliffhanger ending. The arena master, who had never seen such an upset in the history of galactic combat, slowly stood. His voice, once booming with confidence, now trembled. What is your name, human? The warrior turned, wiping Korvax's blood off his knuckles, and grinned. Name's Sergeant Alex Carter. And I'm just getting started. The arena roared. And across the galaxy, for the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Combat League had a new nightmare. Humans. The arena's medics struggled to lift Korvax's massive frame onto a grav stretcher. He was still unconscious, his jaw fractured, ribs cracked, and knee joints hyperextended, all from barehanded strikes. The Galactic Combat League had never seen anything like it. This is impossible, muttered Director Halzir, the head of the Combat Authority. His multi-segmented eyes flicked between the unconscious champion and the human who stood completely unharmed. Every screen across the arena replayed the fight in slow motion. The dodges, the counterstrikes, the final punch. No cheating. No cybernetics. No enhancements. Just raw human skill. And the audience? They had gone from cheering for blood to staring in stunned silence. He did not land a single hit, another council member whispered. The Butcher of Zaltor was destroyed in less than 2 minutes. Then something even more unnerving happened. The other warriors react. In the gladiators' waiting pit, every fighter, from the towering Garlic warlords to the venomous Shurthrai assassins, watched the replay in horror. Some clenched their weapons. Others flexed their claws. And a few were quietly stepping backward. The human had done something no alien warrior ever had. He had made seasoned killers feel fear. The challenge? A booming voice cut through the tension. Fighter Alex Carter. Approach. Sergeant Alex Carter, still calm, still barely breathing hard, glanced up at the floating hologram of the arena master. You have upset the natural order. The murmurs in the stands grew louder. You are an unranked species. A nobody. A primitive. And yet, you defeated our greatest warrior with ease. The arena master's cybernetic eyes narrowed. You will prove that this was not a fluke. Right now. A new challenger entered the ring. A new nightmare emerges. The doors hissed open and the crowd gasped. Oh, by the gods. The next warrior wasn't just another gladiator. He was the executioner of Vornax 6. Krexval, the arena's most sadistic killer. Krexval was not a brute like Korvax. He was worse. The Vornaxian assassin stood over 9 feet tall, his sleek exoskeleton gleaming under the arena's lights. His 6 arms each held a different weapon, a plasma dagger, a hooked chain, a disruptor whip, and 3 others designed for pure, sadistic torture. You fight me now, ape, Krexval rasped, his mandibles clicking. And when I am done, I will pull your bones from your body one by one. The arena master didn't wait for approval. The match bell rang instantly. Ding. And Krexval disappeared. The crowd seized speed like never before. To the alien audience, Krexval moved faster than light itself. One moment he was standing still. The next, he was already behind Carter, his plasma dagger lunging for the human's spine. There was a split second where the entire crowd was convinced the fight was already over. A plasma weapon to the spine was instant death. But then, the human moved. The impossible counter. Not a dodge. A rotation. Carter turned toward the attack, grabbing Krexval's wrist in midair. His grip, like iron, twisted the alien's entire upper body, breaking his momentum. Before anyone could react, Carter drove his elbow into Krexval's exposed jawline. The Vornaxian stumbled backward. The crowd collectively inhaled. Carter had countered a hyperspeed strike with nothing but reflexes and positioning. The announcers were screaming now. What is this? How is he moving like that? And Krexval? He snarled in disbelief. That was not possible. A fight unlike any other. For the first time in arena history, a fight became something entirely different. It wasn't a brawl. It wasn't a slaughter. It was a hunt. Krexval, who had tortured warriors for decades, was now being hunted. Carter wasn't playing the game of the arena. He was dictating the terms of engagement. A precise low kick shattered Krexval's stance. A brutal palm strike collapsed his third lung. A perfectly timed parry sent the plasma dagger skidding across the sand. Step by step, hit by hit, the human was dismantling a legend. The alien audience didn't know whether to cheer or run. This wasn't a warrior. This was something else. Cliffhanger ending, a decision that changes everything. With a final spinning elbow, Carter sent Krexval crashing into the ground, broken, wheezing, defeated. The arena fell into a terrified silence. Then the arena master, visibly shaken, stood once more. This human is an anomaly. The council members murmured, terrified. We cannot allow this. He's proving our entire combat system is flawed. He's making our best warriors look like fools. And then the final blow. We must change the rules. The arena master turned to the audience. And in a voice that shook the Colosseum, he declared, from this moment forward, the human no longer fights single combat. He fights against entire teams. Let us see if he can survive against 5 of our greatest warriors at once. A monstrous roar of approval erupted from the bloodthirsty crowd. Carter? He simply rolled his shoulders and smirked. The crowd erupted into a frenzied cheer, their fear of the human momentarily replaced by the promise of an even bloodier spectacle. One-on-one, the human had proven unstoppable. But 5 against 1? Impossible. Even the greatest warriors in the galaxy couldn't handle that. No species could. Yet Carter did not flinch. He cracked his knuckles, rolled his neck, and stepped forward like this was just another day at the gym. All right, he muttered, voice dripping with amusement. Now this is getting fun. The combatants enter the arena. The massive reinforced gates groaned open as the arena master introduced the 5 new challengers. Each one handpicked for their lethality. Krexval, the executioner, Vornaxian assassin. Now nursing broken ribs but burning with humiliation, his 6 arms still twitching with lethal intent. Thak, the war golem, Tralgar enforcer. A biomechanical titan standing 12 feet tall, his body plated with organic armor that could withstand plasma cannons. Velzer, the phantom, Shurthrai shadow killer. A 4-legged predator with stealth camouflage and retractable blades, moving at speeds too fast for the naked eye. Drelkov, the blood berserker, Scar Dominion brawler. A massive brute that thrived on pain, his body filled with combat-enhancing stimulants that made him stronger with each injury. Zuen Voss, the war priest, Velmari Highguard. A battle mage capable of manipulating energy fields and distorting physics with his mind. The crowd trembled in anticipation. Never had a fighter faced such odds. Never had a single unranked species been subjected to such a brutal test. This was meant to be a public execution. And yet, Carter smiled. Well now, this just ain't fair. For them, the 5 warriors attack. Ding. The moment the bell rang, all 5 warriors lunged at once. Velzer disappeared from sight, his stealth tech rendering him invisible. Krexval launched his chains and whips, seeking to ensnare the human. Drelkov roared, throwing himself forward with reckless abandon. Zuenvoss raised his hands, warping the gravity around Carter, attempting to crush him into the ground. And Thak, the war golem, simply swung his massive fists, aiming to pulp Carter's body in a single blow. The audience held their breath. No one had ever faced an onslaught like this. The massacre began. The counterattack, the human proves why they are feared. Carter moved. Not away. Forward. The sheer audacity of it made the crowd gasp in disbelief. Instead of retreating, he charged straight into the chaos. Step 1. Destroy the battlefield control. Carter's first target wasn't the brute or the assassin. It was the war priest. Zuenvoss had barely begun warping gravity when Carter closed the distance in a blink. A low, brutal kick caved in the alien's knee. A sharp elbow strike crushed his throat. Before the Velmari could even scream, Carter grabbed him by the horns and snapped his neck like a twig. 1 down. Step 2, bait the brute. Drelkov, already mid-charge, was too slow to react. By the time he realized Carter had already killed one of them, it was too late. The human sidestepped at the last second, allowing Drelkov's own momentum to send him crashing face-first into the arena wall. The impact was brutal, shaking the Colosseum. The berserker shook it off instantly, but Carter wasn't finished. You like pain? Carter whispered. He drove his knee into Drelkov's temple. Then have some more. A rapid series of bone-breaking blows followed, so fast the arena's cameras struggled to track them. Drelkov collapsed, twitching, unconscious. 2 down. Step 3, the unseen killer becomes the prey. Velzer was still invisible, but Carter had no need to see him. A predator's biggest mistake, he muttered, is thinking it's the only one in the room. Then he closed his eyes. The crowd froze. Is the human shutting down? Then, a movement. Velzer struck from behind, his razor-sharp claws aimed at Carter's spine. At the last second, Carter ducked, spun, and drove his fist forward in a single devastating punch. His bare fist connected directly with Velzer's skull. The impact shattered the assassin's entire head. 3 down. Step 4, bring the golem to its knees. Rulthak, the war golem, had been charging a devastating plasma attack, waiting for the right moment. But Carter had no intention of letting him fire. Instead of dodging, he did something insane. He jumped straight at the towering machine. With inhuman speed, he climbed the golem's massive frame, dodging mechanical limbs and plasma surges, until he reached its head unit. And then he tore a crucial energy cable straight out of its neck. The war golem staggered violently, its systems failing in seconds. 4 down. Step 5, the executioner's worst nightmare. Krexval, who had just watched his entire team get annihilated in under a minute, did the one thing no one expected. He dropped his weapons. The crowd gasped. The executioner, the sadist, the monster of the arena, fell to his knees. I surrender. Final moment, the human's warning. The entire arena fell silent. Carter stood over Krexval, his breathing even, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned in close. Next time. I won't stop. He turned to the arena master, his face like stone. Is that enough proof? The arena master, once so confident in the destruction of this primitive species, had no words. The entire galaxy had no words. Because in just a few minutes, Carter had rewritten every combat law in existence. The Galactic Combat League would never be the same. The arena was silent. Not the kind of silence that came from shock. No, this was something deeper. This was fear. In the span of mere minutes, a primitive species, a species with no combat ranking, no official military status in the Galactic Combat League, had just annihilated 5 of the greatest warriors in the galaxy. This can't be real. A Sarlacc noble muttered under his breath, his claws trembling against the polished balcony railing. The arena master, once so sure, once so confident that humanity would be crushed beneath the weight of superior species, had lost all color in his face. The entire system of ranked combat had been dismantled in real time. And worst of all, he is not even injured. Alex Carter stood in the center of the blood-stained sands, untouched, his breath steady. He wasn't even winded. He looked up at the private council chambers where the Galactic Combat Authority sat. And he smirked. That was when the council panicked. The emergency council meeting, what to do about humanity. Less than an hour later, the highest-ranking officials in the Galactic Combat League were seated in a towering circular chamber above the arena. The room was filled with the most powerful warlords, kings, and military strategists in the known universe. And every single one of them was afraid. We cannot allow this to continue, a reptilian warlord hissed. This human must be eliminated, immediately. But how? Another leader snapped. He took down a war golem with his bare hands. We should have never let them enter the league. The voices grew louder, rising into a frenzy of paranoia. But then a different voice spoke. A calm, methodical voice. One that commanded the entire room's attention. You're all thinking about this the wrong way. The speaker was Chancellor Xylon, head of the Intergalactic Warfare Division. His cybernetic eyes glowed softly as he stood. Killing him would only prove our fear. The chamber grew quiet. Instead of fighting this human, we should control him. The deal with the devil, an offer no one expects. As the council deliberated, Carter was escorted into a high-security chamber. Unarmed, flanked by 3 armed guards, each one clearly terrified of him. You don't need those, he said casually, gesturing to their weapons. If I wanted to leave, I would. That sentence alone sent a visible shudder through them. Finally, the chamber doors slid open, revealing Chancellor Xylon. The alien leader studied him carefully. Sergeant Carter, he began. I assume you know why you're here. Carter folded his arms. Because I broke your toy soldiers? Because you have proven that humanity is far more dangerous than we anticipated? Carter said nothing. Then Xylon made his move. The Galactic Combat League was never meant for humans. It was meant to keep the dominant species in check, under a controlled system. You have shattered that system. And now you have 2 choices. He stepped closer, voice cold, calculating. 1. We declare humanity an existential threat and unite the galaxy against your species before you have a chance to expand beyond your borders. Carter's smirk faded. Or 2. Xylon continued, his eyes narrowing. You fight for us. Carter's jaw tensed. Fight for you? We have enemies, Sergeant Carter. Threats far greater than the warriors you faced in the arena. We need weapons capable of eliminating them. You have demonstrated that humans, alone, might be that weapon. He leaned forward. Swear loyalty to us and humanity will be rewarded. Given resources, status, power. The implication was clear. If Carter refused, Earth would be seen as a threat, and the combined might of the Galactic League would move to wipe it from existence before it had a chance to rise. The humans answer, a response that shakes the galaxy. The room stood still. The guards were watching, their fingers trembling over their weapons. The council members leaned forward, waiting. Then Carter did something none of them expected. He laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not forced. A genuine, amused laugh. Xylon's eyes narrowed. You find this funny? You think you can control us, Carter said, shaking his head. That's adorable. The council chamber froze. No one had ever spoken to the Chancellor like that. Carter leaned forward, mirroring Xylon's stance. Here's what's gonna happen. His voice dropped lower like he was sharing a secret. I'm gonna walk out of this room. You're gonna let me. And then you're gonna go back to your little council and pray to whatever gods you believe in. That humanity never decides to play your game for real. The Chancellor's expression didn't change. But his hands twitched. Because for the first time in his entire career he felt fear. Carter stood up, stretched, and headed for the door. And as he reached it, he glanced over his shoulder and said, I suggest you start practicing how to kneel. You're gonna need it. Then he was gone. Cliffhanger ending, the League's response. The moment Carter left the chamber, the council erupted. This is unacceptable. We should have executed him on sight. We must strike Earth before it's too late. But Chancellor Xylon did not speak. He simply stared at the door Carter had walked through, and for the first time in thousands of years, he felt something he had never felt before. Dread. Because in that moment, the Galactic Combat League realized the terrifying truth. They had invited humans into the arena to control them. But instead, they had just announced their existence to a species that was never meant to be tamed. And now, the galaxy was no longer ready for what came next. Less than 12 hours after Carter walked out of the council chamber, the decision was made. The Galactic Combat League could not allow humanity to exist. The greatest mistake in their history wasn't letting a human fight, it was showing them the limits of alien warfare. We strike Earth before they have time to mobilize. Chancellor Xylon's voice echoed through the war chamber, cold and absolute. Every council member present nodded in agreement. Deploy the suppression fleet. Ensure their complete and immediate destruction. Send the dreadnoughts. Target all major population centers. Make sure they don't get the chance to fight back. The order was given. A battle fleet of over 500 warships, commanded by the most powerful empires in the League, was dispatched to Earth's doorstep. The humans would never see it coming. At least, that's what they thought. Earth receives the news, the response that shocks the galaxy. Aboard the UEN United Earth Navy, Orbital Command, deep in the Sol system, the emergency war sirens screamed to life. Vice Admiral Renee Calloway stood at the center of the war room, eyes locked onto the incoming fleet's transmission feed. She read the encrypted message once. Then twice. Then she smiled. They're making their move. The other officers exchanged wary glances. Admiral, a lieutenant asked carefully. Should we prepare to negotiate? Calloway's laugh was bitter. Negotiate? Oh, son, they just handed us an invitation. She turned to her communications officer. Send the alert to all Earth fleets. Full planetary defense mobilization. Code Black. The room tensed. We're not just defending, she added. We're showing them what happens when you threaten humanity. The Galactic Fleet arrives, but Earth is ready. The massive League fleet exited hyperspace at the edge of Sol system, weapons primed, war engines roaring. Their fleet dwarfed anything humanity had ever seen before. Or so they thought. Because as soon as they entered Earth's defense range, thousands of automated defense platforms activated. Planetary railguns realigned their targeting systems. The stealth fleets, long hidden beyond Pluto's orbit, decloaked. And every single UN warship was already waiting. We have them. On my mark. Launch the counteroffensive. Show them what a real war looks like. The first shots, humanity's unfair advantage. The Galactic League expected planetary bombardment to be the opening move. Instead, they were caught in a web of their own arrogance. Within the first 30 seconds of engagement, 17 League warships were obliterated before they could fire a single shot. Hundreds of strike craft swarmed their ranks, maneuvering at impossible angles. Every League dreadnought suddenly found itself under fire from cloaked human warships, equipped with weapons they had never encountered before. This isn't possible, A League captain screamed as his battlecruiser was ripped apart by kinetic rounds traveling at near-light speeds. They thought humans were primitive. They thought they had the technological advantage. They were wrong. Pull back. Pull. Boom. His ship vanished in a brilliant explosion, taking thousands of crew members with it. We're losing too many vessels. They shouldn't have this kind of military power. They were supposed to be weak. They had underestimated Earth. And now, they were paying the price. Carter returns, the true weapon of humanity. Amid the chaos, a single human warship entered the battlefield. Smaller than the dreadnoughts. Faster. More precise. At its helm? Sergeant Alex Carter. This is Carter. Target acquired. He wasn't just fighting. He was hunting. Carter's personal strike team, an elite unit of Earth's best special forces operatives, infiltrated enemy ships, cutting through entire League battalions in hand-to-hand combat. Their tactics were brutal. Their speed unmatched. Within minutes, key League command ships were falling, their officers slaughtered by warriors they never should have provoked. The tide had turned. They sent their best fleet to wipe us out, Carter murmured, watching the League forces collapse in real time. And they just gave us the perfect excuse to take everything they have. Final blow, Earth's declaration to the galaxy. The remnants of the League fleet tried to retreat. But Earth wasn't letting them go. Admiral Calloway gave the final order. All forces, engage at will. No survivors. What happened next shattered galactic history forever. No alien fleet had ever been completely wiped out before. No battle had ever been this one-sided. But by the time the battle ended, only wreckage remained. Earth had not only survived, it had won. And now, humanity was on the offensive. Cliffhanger ending, the Galactic League's final mistake. As the battle reports came in, the surviving members of the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. Xylon's hands trembled as he read the final casualty count. This isn't just a military failure, he whispered. We didn't just lose a battle. His voice shook. We just started a war we cannot win. The Galactic League had never lost a war. Until now. Across the known universe, emergency broadcasts repeated the same chilling message. The League's Grand Fleet has been destroyed. The Earth campaign is a failure. Total loss. The human counteroffensive has begun. For the first time in galactic history, the League's greatest military forces had been shattered beyond repair. And now the nightmare was just beginning. The High Council's last desperate plan. In the heart of the League's capital world, a war council convened in panic. The most powerful leaders in the galaxy sat around a holographic war table, watching the relentless stream of catastrophic updates from the front lines. Chancellor Xylon, his cybernetic fingers trembling, stood before the assembly. We are out of time, he said grimly. The humans are coming. A reptilian warlord slammed his fist against the table. How? How can a species that wasn't even ranked in our combat hierarchy do this? Their fleet should not be this advanced. Their tactics should not be this effective. They are supposed to be primitive. Xylon's eyes darkened. Then perhaps we must redefine what primitive truly means. A silence fell over the council. They weren't fighting an inferior species. They were fighting something they had never encountered before. Something that didn't fit their established rules of warfare. Something far more dangerous. We have two choices, Xylon continued. Either we surrender, or we launch everything we have before they reach our borders. A hushed murmur spread through the council chamber. And then one by one the vote was cast. Deploy the doomsday fleets. Activate every planetary defense system. Humanity will not reach our homeworlds. It was too late for negotiations. The Galactic League had declared total war. The human invasion begins. At the edge of League space, human warships tore through the first line of planetary defenses. Earth's fleets, once dismissed as a joke, now moved like precision instruments of destruction. They didn't fight like the League. They fought like predators. Stealth ships decloaked in planetary orbit, surgically eliminating key command centers before ground forces even landed. Orbital bombardment struck only critical targets, crippling infrastructure, not destroying entire cities. Human soldiers deployed in perfect formation, outmaneuvering larger alien battalions with ruthless efficiency. Where League armies relied on overwhelming numbers, humanity relied on strategy, speed, and brutal precision. Within days, the first League strongholds had fallen. Within weeks, entire planets surrendered without firing a shot. Because the truth was now clear to the entire galaxy. You don't fight humanity. You don't survive humanity. You submit or you die. Sergeant Alex Carter, the face of humanity's wrath. At the front of the invasion, one soldier's name spread like wildfire. Alex Carter. The man who humiliated the League in the arena. The man who led the counteroffensive against the suppression fleet. The man who now stood at the gates of the League's most fortified strongholds. To the League, he was the harbinger of extinction. To humanity, he was the first of many. "We gave you a chance to leave us alone," Carter said coldly, standing over a captured League general. "You chose war instead." He raised his sidearm. The general's voice shook. "Please? We surrender. We'll negotiate." Carter's face was stone. "No. You already made your decision." Boom. A single shot. One more enemy eliminated. And the war continued. Final phase, the fall of the Galactic League's capital. With every stronghold falling, the League's final forces retreated to their capital world, Zalvanna Prime. The last remaining fleets, the last generals, the last warlords, all gathered for a final stand. The planet was protected by defensive shields, planetary cannons, and orbital stations, a fortress that had never been breached in galactic history. But this time, they weren't facing another alien empire. They were facing humans. All forces, Carter commanded as the final assault began. Take the planet. Cliffhanger ending, the final hours of the League. As Earth's fleet descended upon Zalvanna Prime, Chancellor Xylon stood in his private chambers, staring at the burning sky. His empire was falling. His people were surrendering. And at the front of it all? The species they had once dismissed as irrelevant. "We should have never let them enter the arena," he whispered. Behind him, a human commando raised his weapon. "No, Chancellor," the soldier said. "You should have never challenged us in the first place." Zalvanna Prime, the heart of the Galactic League, its most fortified world, the beacon of its rule for over 10,000 years, was burning. From orbit, the once pristine capital world had become a blazing ruin, its towering spires collapsing as human warships bombarded key infrastructure with pinpoint precision. The sky was filled with fire. Humanity's armies had landed. And now, in the final hours of the League's existence, the survivors of the High Council barricaded themselves inside the last remaining stronghold, the Imperial Citadel, a fortress so well defended it had withstood centuries of attempted insurrections and planetary invasions. But today, for the first time in history, it would fall. Carter leads the charge. The final assault begins. Outside the Citadel gates, Sergeant Alex Carter stood at the head of Earth's elite ground forces, their armor gleaming under the eerie red glow of burning cities. His expression was cold, unreadable. He had fought in hundreds of battles, seen the worst of war, the horrors of alien slaughter, the desperate last stands of those who refused to accept reality. But this wasn't a battle. This was an execution. "Breach the gates," Carter ordered. The first wave of demolition teams surged forward, placing explosives at key structural points while railgun tanks fired at the shield generators, weakening the fortress's last line of defense. Inside the Citadel, League soldiers, once so proud, once so certain of their military superiority, scrambled in terror. "Hold the line," their commanders shouted. "For the League." But their voices carried no conviction. Because the truth was already clear. The League was finished. Inside the Citadel, the Council's final moments. In the war chamber of the Imperial Citadel, the remaining High Council members and warlords sat in a circle, their faces grim. Chancellor Xylon, who had once ruled the League with absolute certainty, was now a shell of himself. "We have to surrender," one of the generals said, voice trembling. "If we negotiate, perhaps they'll—" "No." Xylon's voice was hollow, but there was still steel in his eyes. "Humanity does not negotiate. They do not conquer in the way we do." He slowly turned to face the others, his voice dropping to a whisper of realization. "We are not dealing with another empire. We are dealing with a force of nature." Silence. Outside, the ground shook violently as the first breach explosives detonated. The last barrier between the Citadel and the human forces collapsed. Carter's entry, a god among insects. The moment the doors blew open, the final battle lasted less than 5 minutes. Human shock troopers flooded the halls, moving with precision and speed no alien force had ever encountered. The remaining League warriors fought bravely, but bravery meant nothing against tactical superiority. Blaster fire filled the air. Screams echoed through the halls. One by one, the greatest warlords of the League fell. And at the very end of the chamber, Chancellor Xylon stood alone, his trembling hand gripping an ancient ceremonial blade. Then he heard the footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Alex Carter stepped into the room. His armor was scratched but intact. His rifle was lowered, he didn't need it anymore. He stopped a few paces away, studying the alien before him. "It's over?" Xylon laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Do you even understand what you've done, human? You haven't just defeated us. You've erased an entire way of life." Carter tilted his head. "Good." Xylon bared his teeth. "You think you're different? That humanity is somehow better?" He gestured toward the burning skyline visible from the shattered windows. "You are worse than us. You don't just conquer, Carter. You obliterate." Carter's expression didn't change. Then, slowly he raised his pistol. Xylon straightened, closing his eyes. "Do it then." Carter pulled the trigger. Boom. The Chancellor's body slumped to the floor. The Galactic League was no more. Humanity's final message to the galaxy. 3 days later, a transmission was broadcast across every known system. Carter, clad in his black combat armor, stood before the camera, his expression unwavering. Behind him, the Galactic League's banners were torn, replaced by the emblem of Earth's dominion. Then he spoke. "This is Sergeant Alex Carter of the United Earth Forces. As of this moment, the Galactic League no longer exists. We did not seek war. You brought it to us. And now, you will live with the consequences. The era of alien dominance is over. The future belongs to humanity." The transmission cut out. And across the galaxy, every remaining empire, every surviving species, every broken ruler understood one thing. The age of mankind had begun. The war was over. The Galactic League was gone. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy had no ruling body, no supreme authority, no enforced hierarchy, except for the one that had just taken its place. Humanity had won. And now it was time to decide what came next. The surrender of the last worlds. Across the remains of the League, dozens of alien-controlled worlds broadcast the same desperate message. "We surrender. We acknowledge Earth's rule. We await your orders." Some surrendered out of fear. Others did so because they had seen the inevitable. Humanity had not just defeated the League, they had eradicated the idea of alien superiority. The survivors of former League member species knelt before the new power in the galaxy, awaiting judgment. And yet, in those first days after victory, there was no declaration of extermination, no planetary genocide, no mass executions. Because despite everything, humanity was not the monsters they were expected to be. "We're not here to erase you," Carter had said in one of the first public addresses. "We're here to build something better." But that didn't mean forgiveness. And it sure as hell didn't mean mercy. The war trials, judgment for the crimes of the League. At the heart of the former League capital, a new court was established. The war trials of Zalvanna Prime became the largest tribunal in galactic history, where thousands of alien warlords, slavers, and politicians were forced to answer for their crimes. The same people who once judged other species with an iron fist were now the ones in chains. Many tried to plead. Some claimed ignorance. Others screamed defiantly, saying humanity was no better than the League. Carter's response? Cold and absolute. "You enslaved species for sport. You waged wars for entertainment. You forced civilizations into blood sport arenas for your amusement. You don't get to walk away from that." One by one, the war criminals were executed. One by one, the architects of the League's atrocities were erased from existence. And the galaxy watched in silence. Because for the first time in history, justice was not dictated by the League's elite. It was dictated by those they had oppressed. Rebuilding the galaxy, the new order takes shape. In the months following the war, humanity's rule spread across the stars. But unlike the old empires, they did not rule through fear alone. Instead, Earth's forces established a new system, one built not on oppression but efficiency. Former League slave worlds were freed, their economies rebuilt. War-torn colonies were stabilized, no longer taxed to fuel an endless war machine. The old combat arenas? Dismantled. Never to be used again. For some species this was salvation. For others it was humiliation. Because in the end they were ruled by the very species they once dismissed as weak. "We gave you a chance to let us be," Carter had said during the first official Galactic Summit. "You chose war instead. This is the consequence." Some alien leaders gritted their teeth but bowed nonetheless. Because resisting was no longer an option. The final decision, Carter's farewell. Months after the fall of the League, Sergeant Alex Carter stood atop the balcony of Earth's new galactic capital, overlooking a skyline that had once belonged to the League's elite. Now, it belonged to humanity. He had led Earth through its greatest war. He had personally broken the League's best warriors, torn apart their battle fleets, and shattered the illusion of alien superiority. And yet, he was done. You're leaving? Admiral Calloway asked him as he stared at the vast city before them. Carter nodded. My job was to win the war. That's done. We could use you, she admitted. As a leader, as a ruler. Carter smirked. I'm not a ruler, Admiral. I'm just a soldier who got pissed off. He turned, ready to leave, but paused one last time. Keep an eye on them, he said. The moment they start thinking they can challenge us again, remind them what happened here. And with that, he disappeared into history. Final transmission, humanity's last warning. Before Carter vanished from public life, he sent out one last transmission. A message to every remaining empire, every watching species, every hesitant ruler who might consider rising against Earth's rule. A simple, final declaration. You all thought humanity was weak. You all thought we were prey. You were wrong. We are not your rulers. We are not your tyrants. But if you ever cross us again, we will end you. The message was received loud and clear. And from that moment on, the galaxy never questioned human supremacy again. Epilogue, the new age of the galaxy. Under humanity's rule, the galaxy entered an age of brutal peace. There were no more senseless wars, no more enslaved species, no more gladiatorial blood sports. For the first time in millennia, order had been established. But it was an order built on one undeniable truth. Humanity was not the strongest empire. Humanity was not the most advanced species. But they were the most dangerous. And as long as humanity ruled, the galaxy would never forget the war that changed everything. The war where humans proved once and for all that they were never meant to be controlled.